Hello and welcome to our deep dive into artificial intelligence. Today we'll be discussing how AI is changing the world around us.
And we're tackling a pretty bold claim today.
Yeah, a really bold one. Security researchers at the Black Hat conference, they basically said current AI voice detection is, well, their word was bullshit.
Strong language, but it definitely grabs your attention. They're saying these systems are easily bypassed.
Exactly. Which, considering how much we're starting to rely on voice tech, that's pretty concerning.
It really is. So this deep dive, we're going to explore these challenges in detecting AI-generated voices based largely on that Black Hat presentation.
And it's interesting because initially the research seemed quite positive, didn't it? High accuracy rates being reported.
Oh, absolutely. You saw papers claiming 98%, even a 100% accuracy in spotting these fake voices. It looked like we were getting a handle on it.
Right. But the core problem these researchers highlighted is that those results, well, they don't hold up outside the lab.
Precisely. They found these detectors fail in real-world environments and, crucially, can be actively fooled quite easily.
And who are these researchers again? From China, I believe.
Yes, two speakers from China. And interestingly, one was an undergraduate presenting for the first time at a major conference like Black Hat.
Wow. Talk about making an entrance.
Definitely. Their initial motivation apparently was actually to build a better detector. But they ran into problems.
So they shifted focus from building to breaking.
Kind of, yeah. They started testing the existing solutions and realized how ineffective they were in practice. That led them down the path of bypassing them.
Okay, so before we get into the how, maybe let's clarify what we mean by fake voices today. We're not talking about those old, clunky text-to-speech systems, are we?
No, not at all. Those were, frankly, pretty easy to spot. Robotic, unnatural, modern AI speech synthesis is a different beast entirely.
It can sound incredibly human.
Eerily so. Deep learning allows these systems to mimic intonation, emotion, even specific people's voices with remarkable accuracy. You or I probably couldn't tell the difference just by listening.
Which is why those early detection results, those high accuracy numbers, seemed so important, like 98%, 100%. How are they claiming to achieve that?
Well, a lot of it involved techniques like computer vision, basically turning the sound into an image, like a spectrogram, and analyzing that or looking at specific signal properties in the audio.
Okay, seemed promising on paper, but then came the catch.
The big catch. These researchers identified this key weakness. The detectors were often relying on what they called speaker-irrelevant features.
Speaker-irrelevant features. Well, what does that mean exactly?
The thing about things in a recording that aren't fundamentally part of your unique voice print, like the background noise in the room, maybe some static from the microphone, even the language being spoken, or pauses, silence.
Right, those things change depending on where you are or what you're doing. They aren't you.
Exactly. Your voice has core characteristics, resonance, how you form vowels. Those are more speaker invariant. But these detectors, they found, were latching on to the irrelevant stuff.
So if the detector thinks, there's background noise, must be real, you could potentially fool it.
That's the core finding. They realized these detectors were, in a way, listening to the environment as much as the voice. And that makes them unreliable as soon as you leave the clean, controlled lab setting.
Which led them to develop their own method for bypassing these detectors, right? This safety twisting safety thing.
That's the one, a kitschy name. It's a tool they built, based on deep learning, specifically designed to exploit this reliance on speaker-irrelevant features.
So how does it work? How do you twist safety?
The basic idea is to take an AI-generated voice and subtly change those irrelevant features to make it look human to the detector. It's like digital camouflage for the audio.
Okay, what kind of changes are we talking about?
Well, one technique they demonstrated was filtering out certain frequencies. Specifically, they focused on removing frequencies below 4 kilohertz.
Why below 4 kilohertz?
Their theory was that things like room acoustics, microphone characteristics, basically noise and environmental factors, might be more dominant in those lower frequencies. By removing or altering that range, they could potentially strip out some of the cues the detectors were wrongly relying on. They also tweaked sound levels, amplitude values.
And they showed this worked.
They did.
Well,
They had this demo using a recording of Elon Musk. They played the original, then their manipulated fake version.
the fake Musk voice? What did it say? Something memorable.
Yeah, something like, I will give everyone $10 million.
Yeah.
It's just a casual promise.
Right. And the key thing was their manipulated version slipped past the detectors.
Exactly. The detectors flagged the original AI voice,
Right.
but the twisted version got classified as human. It neatly showed how manipulating these irrelevant features could bypass state-of-the-art systems.
It really hammers home that point about speaker invariant features being what we should be looking for, the actual unique qualities of a person's voice.
Absolutely. Yeah. True detection shouldn't be thrown off by a bit of background hiss or a pause. And they proved this further, didn't they? By messing with real recordings.
Yeah, they took genuine human speech and just did simple things like removing background noise or cutting out silent gaps.
And what happened?
The accuracy of the detectors plummeted, which is kind of backward, isn't it? Cleaning up a real recording made it harder for the detector to recognize it as real.
It perfectly illustrates the flaw. The detectors were reliant on the imperfections, the irrelevant noise and silence, as indicators of authenticity. Crazy, really.
So to evaluate all this properly, they set up some specific research questions, RQ1, RQ2, and so on.
Right, 4 key questions to structure their findings. RQ1 was about practicality. Are these high-accuracy detectors actually useful in the real world?
And the answer was,
A pretty clear no. They found high false positive rates, especially with unbalanced data sets, meaning data sets where there's way more real speech than fake speech, like, reality.
yeah, if your security system constantly flags real people as fake, it's useless. What was RQ2?
Do speaker irrelevant features actually affect these existing detection methods?
Which we've kind of covered, but their answer was,
A definitive yes.
yeah.
The experiments with noise and silence removal demonstrated that conclusively. These features were having a huge, often negative impact.
Okay, RQ3. This was about their own system, right? Safety deep voice. Could it clone voices and bypass detection?
Yes, and they showed it could. The fake voices generated by their system had much higher negative rates.
Negative rates, meaning they were more often incorrectly labeled as human by the detector.
Exactly. A higher negative rate means the fake voice is doing a better job of fooling the detector. They used various phrases for testing, like, the weather is very nice today, or I have 10 HEOs.
TOs, is that a specific term?
Possibly a typo or a specific cultural reference in the original presentation material, maybe related to a Chinese currency unit or just an arbitrary phrase. The point was, their generated voices consistently fooled the detectors.
Got it. And the final question, RQ4, was about usability, essentially.
Pretty much. Are the generated speeches understandable? Because an undetectable voice isn't much use if it's just garbled nonsense.
And were they?
Yes. They did listening tests. The generated voices, even after manipulation, were clear and understandable. They sounded like real people speaking coherently.
Okay, so summing this up, what are the big takeaways here?
Well, the biggest one is just how brittle current AI voice detection seems to be. It's surprisingly easy to generate fake voices that can fool these systems by targeting those irrelevant features.
Which means the risk level is higher than we thought.
Much higher. The potential for voice-based crime, fraud, social engineering, it's significant if we can't reliably tell real from fake. Current solutions just aren't dependable for real-world use.
That's a pretty stark warning.
It is, but there's a constructive side too. The researchers released their tools and, importantly, their data sets.
The data sets include the noisy versions, the silence-removed ones, and their generated fakes.
Yes, all of it. Plus, the code on GitHub. It's a substantial data set, about 7.8 gigabytes, designed to help other researchers test their own methods and build better, more robust detectors.
So they're trying to push the field forward, even after showing its weaknesses.
Absolutely. And their own research is continuing. They mentioned working on faster methods.
Faster bypass methods.
Yeah, apparently reaching a 100% bypass rate, though it took about 10 minutes to generate the voice in those tests. But still, it shows the threat is evolving. They're also trying to develop detectors that are suitable for real-world deployment.
It's a constant cat and mouse game then.
It really is. The technology for generating fakes improves, and detection has to try and keep up or ideally get ahead.
So, to wrap up our deep dive, the big finding is this major vulnerability in AI voice detection. Systems we thought were getting good are actually quite easy to fool by manipulating these speaker-irrelevant features.
Right, they're looking at the wrong clues, essentially. And this makes generating undetectable fake voices worryingly straightforward, with serious implications for security, for trust.
For knowing if the voice on the other end of the line or in that recording is actually who or what it claims to be.
Precisely. It forces us to reconsider how we verify identity and authenticity in an audio context.
It definitely leaves you thinking. Considering how easily voices can apparently be faked now, what does that mean for things like audio evidence in legal cases or just trusting what you hear day to day? How do we even begin to rethink verification for the future?
That's the crucial question we're left with.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the future of artificial intelligence. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and learned something new. See you next time.